Tourists to South Africa come here for a holiday, but South Africans visiting abroad are mostly there for business or academic or medical reasons. Now, sporting events are one of the biggest tourist attractions in our country. Let's take a look at the economic impact. Joining us is Christel Groman, Director of the Specialist Tourism Unit at BDO South Africa. Christel, good evening, and thanks so much for your time. So you look at these numbers that are released every now and then. The latest numbers on the country's tourism and migration numbers, what are they telling us?
So up until August, we were still down quite significantly. So 2 years decline for both African as well as overseas tourism. So about -2%. So although in percentages, it's not large, but it's numbers, a couple of 100,000, and these are numbers that we need. So the fact that it was 2 years in decline is probably a concern, given the audacious target that we have of 21 million overseas or foreign arrivals by 2030 that the President set in the SONA earlier this year. So we're not really getting there. And if we look at the figures up to September, it's sort of what we expected, because we had a lot of the xenophobia very early in September. So Nigerian numbers very, very much significantly down in double digits now. And then also we see from other African countries the same thing. Overseas tourism a little bit flat, not so much, but we're not yet on a increased path.
Okay, well, when does that traditionally happen? I mean, we are in December already. We're well into December. If we haven't seen those numbers yet, are we going to see them? And considering where we are in terms of, like, you know, electricity, load shedding and all of that, and how that impacts business?
Absolutely. So unfortunately, some of the things that we'd hoped would come earlier, so for instance with the change in birth certificate requirements, etc., the official documentation only really came in November, so there's not much time to really bring it in for this December holiday period for overseas travellers. Maybe for VFR, for visiting friends and relatives, they could make some decisions. Can I bring the kids? May come. But generally, we don't really expect to see this season, which sort of, for foreign arrivals, really sort of starts September, going to March, April. We're not really expecting that uptick yet. However, some of the forward bookings beyond that, particularly for destinations such as Cape Town, are starting to show some good figures coming through in the forward bookings, higher than we had, say, a month or two ago. So there definitely is some change in those numbers.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, it's that we cannot depend on people coming to just see beautiful South Africa anymore, or because we're a cheap destination if you live abroad, if you're from Europe or the States or wherever it is you might be coming from. We cannot depend on that. We have to create some attractions, and sporting events, from what I understand, seem to be, but what sport?
Absolutely. So obviously rugby is a big one. We've just come off the winning of the World Cup. That gave us a lot of positive attraction, a lot of positive messaging that came with probably more than we normally get. We do also think that there's a good connection with those. It was quite interesting for me to see that how many of my friends and relatives that live overseas that were not necessarily, I would say, very positive, but still went and wore their Bok jerseys and went to see a final in a pub living overseas, or actually travelled to Japan. So suddenly it's still so. Perhaps we can use that more to our benefit, because we do need those good messages to come from that market, as well as from ourselves, to put it out there.
Well, as far as I know, what is it? Just the rugby sevens that might attract people at the moment in Cape Town?
So rugby sevens have just finished, so
would have attracted
definitely a good. So we normally see with the rugby sevens, when we do the economic impact in Cape Town, it's about a 10%, 10 to 15%, depending on the year. Foreign visitors vis-a-vis South African visitors. We obviously get a lot of South African visitors from outside of Cape Town that go down, because it is quite a fun weekend down there. So definitely good tourism and good for the beginning of the season. It's nice for them to have. If we look at some of the events that are coming up, so we will have Rugby Sevens World Cup in 2022. We will have the British Lions Tour in 2021. So definitely, but we can do with more of those. Large events that we bring to the country that really gives that good tick up in the numbers and not just depend on the normal numbers. Another market I think that is, other than the VFR market, which I think we really could do far more on, in South Africa, it's a big market, up to 40 to 50%, depending on which market you're looking at. It comes for visiting friends and relatives, and that could be for weddings, it could be for religion, it could be for funerals, it could be for so many reasons. So we need to understand that a bit better and make more use of that, and that could be quick turnaround. But also the youth market. So we now have the abridged birth certificates changed, so we can now get that youth market in.
And what about within South Africa? What about South African tourism? South Africans going around the country?
Absolutely.
We've seen such a big push for that. Has it worked?
It does. I think mostly people don't realize they are tourists. I always say in the South African domestic tourism market, we should actually call it a visitor economy, because we understand visitors and understand visiting, and we don't always understand the term tourism. It sounds very, that's for somebody that has a lot of money, but we all go home, we all do different things. So if each of us that goes home does at least one tourist activity, that makes a big difference to the tourism coffers as well. We are lucky in South Africa. We do have a very big domestic tourism market, and most tourism markets around the world that are strong markets have a strong domestic tourism market, so we definitely need to keep on growing that.
Okay, so it might not be a good show for 2019, but let's hope going forward
hope
that
for
now that we know what
2020.
to hope for 2020. Thank you so much, Christel Groman. She's Director of the Specialist Tourism Unit at BDO South Africa.